see that evening sun go down. I hate to see that evening sun go down. 'Cause my baby, he done left this town. I'm feeling tomorrow just like I feel today. I said I'm feeling tomorrow just like I feel today. Well, now I'll pack my bags and make my getaway. St. Louis woman with her diamond rings, she pulls that man around by his apron string. Oh, 'twas for powder and for store-bought hair. That man that I love, he would not go nowhere, nowhere. I got the St. Louis blues, just as blue as I can be. That man got a heart like a rock cast in the sea. Or else he wouldn't have gone as far from me. I've been to that gypsy, done got my fortune told. I've been to that gypsy, done got my fortune told. Ooh, I'm so wild, wild about my jelly roll. Whoa, gypsy done told me, don't you wear no black. Ooh, gypsy done told me, don't you wear no black. Just go to St. Louis, you're bound to bring him back. Oh, St. Louis woman with her diamond ring, I got the same Louis blues, just as blue as I can be. That man got a heart like a rock cast in the sea. Yes, or else he wouldn't have gone as far from me. Look out now. She ain't got a thing on me, baby. You better take another look now. St. Louis woman with her diamond rings. She pulls that man around by his apron strings. Hers too. 'Twas for powder and for store-bought hair. That man that I love, he would not go nowhere, nowhere. I got the same Louis blues, just as blue as I can be. Yeah, that man got a heart like a rock cast in the sea. Or else he wouldn't have gone as far from me. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Howard Hughes Live. My name is Tora Bay, and I am a friend of Mr. Hughes. And I'd like to tell you that in his first act, Mr. Hughes will be covering his money, his movies, and aviation. And now, I'd like for you to meet the chairman of the board, Mr. Howard Hughes.
You doesn't got to call me Mr. Hughes. You can call me Howard. Would you play that little tune I like? That's nice. Give me that little intro you do. That's neat. Marching onward, marching to that lovely tune. Marching onward, marching onward, happy as a bird in June. Dance slowly, prance slowly, listen to the tune. Hop and skip, now do the slow drag. Whoa, 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 do the slow drag. I like this part. Like a tango. Marching onward, marching onward, marching to that lovely tune. Marching onward, marching onward, happy as a bird in June. Dance slowly, prance slowly, listen to the tune. Now, an awful lot of people think that I'm kind of strange. Out of the ordinary is a term that is often applied to me, and I'm really not that different than anybody else. I happen to believe that everybody has in their character some level of eccentricity, no matter who they are. I just happen to be prominent, and most prominent men generally have exaggerations written about them, usually through the newspapers. I'm just a fella that is interested in science, nature, the earth, and the minerals that come out of it, and I am very shy by nature, and frankly, most people bore me. Both of my parents died when I was very young, first my mother, then my father, and a lot of people have asked me how I got all my money. Well, it's very simple. When I was 18 years old, I was left about $500,000 and the responsibility of running a business that my father built up through an oil drill bit that had been developed by him. Now, if you can't take $500,000 and make it grow, you're not trying very hard. About this time, I married a lady named Ella Rice, and I hired a fella named Noah Dietrich to come to work for me because I had really very little interest in the tool company. And I felt it was important to buy out all the remaining stock from my relatives because I didn't want any partners. It seemed to me that all of my father's work had yet to be done by me. Sometimes people call me absent-minded. And the truth is, I get lost in thought sometimes. I like to think. To me, the greatest undiscovered universe is the human mind, because it contains a wealth of creativity, and all great accomplishments come through the use of the imagination. Now, movies are a form of the imagination, and I developed an interest in the making of movies when I was going to school in Ojai. A few years later, I directed a few of them. Now, some critic made the observation that I really wasn't qualified to direct because I didn't have any formal training. Just some rich playboy throwing around a lot of money. Well, let me tell you that my Uncle Rupert was a very famous Hollywood star, and he would come out to Ojai, and he would pick me up from school and take me around to where movies were being made. I took notes and made a very accurate study. And it was D.W. Griffith who made the observation that with the element of the movies, you could actually photograph a daydream. Now, if all that's not formal training, I don't know what else to call it. I'm always chasing rainbows, watching clouds drifting by. My dreams are just like all my schemes, ending in the sky. Sex. Believe me, I'm always chasing rainbows, waiting to find a little bluebird passing by. Now, my first attempts at producing films were not very successful. I received numerous lectures from Noah Dietrich. My first film was called Swell Hogan, and it was far from swell. It flopped. However, my third film achieved some level of success. It won an Academy Award. That's certainly an improvement over the first two. It was called Two Arabian Nights, and it made big stars out of a fellow named Louis Wolheim and William Boyd. Now, William Boyd was later on to become known as Hopalong Cassidy. Now, Louis Wolheim was a great actor, and he was in demand after this film, And this English fella came up to me and he said that he wanted to use Mr. Wollheim's services on a movie for 3 days that he was producing. I said, well, that's fine. That's $20,000. And he agreed to the figure, and a little while later the fella came back and he starts apologizing to me. And I said, sir, you don't have any reason to feel sorry because you made a deal with me. Now, Mr. Wollheim will report to work next Monday, and I want the money now. Now, that's how you make money. You have people keep their agreements. Now, I had 3 goals. I forgot to say this a second ago, but this is very important. I had 3 goals. One was to become the greatest movie producer in Hollywood. The second was to become the greatest aviator of his day. And the third was to become the greatest golfer in America. Well, I did pretty good at golf. I had a 1 handicap, and I excelled in the others. Now, my film was called Hell's Angels. And during the filming of Hell's Angels, the director and I had various disagreements until it became necessary for me to take over the direction of the film. It made a big star out of Jean Harlow, and it's my favorite film because of the fascination I've always had for flying. I had just gotten my pilot's license at the time, and I wanted these stuntmen to do a shot. I wanted the plane in a dive. They said they wouldn't do it because it was too dangerous. I said, well, anybody could do it. I could do it. I did it, and it was my first plane crash. Had magnificent dogfights in it, and at the time I had the largest private air force in the world. Now, a thing came along called The Jazz Singer, and Hell's Angels was originally filmed in silence, and all of it changed with the advent of sound. Sound sold and silence didn't. So I decided to scrap most of this movie and redo it in sound. And Noah Dietrich again criticized my expenditures. He said I never ever made my money back. There was a sequence in the movie where the Germans were jumping out of a Zeppelin for the fatherland. And I just kept having them jump over and over and over again because they didn't have the dedication to dying look embedded on their faces. And as I said, I kept having them jump over and over and over. And by the end of the day, they looked like they were ready to die. Hell's Angels did cost more than it earned, but it was still a hit. Next came Scarface. Now, Scarface was a great hit because gangster movies were very popular in the 30s. It starred Paul Muni, and it made a big star out of a fellow named George Raft. He became famous by flipping this coin. And the censoring company, the Hayes office, wanted to censor it because they said that it had too much violence and sex in it, and they wouldn't give it an official seal. But I took them on, though, and I released this film just exactly the way that I wanted it. And the newspapers said that I was courageous in fighting censorship. Well, hell, I was only trying to make a buck. Next came The Front Page. Now, this movie made a big star out of Pat O'Brien, and it was originally supposed to star Louis Wollheim as the editor, but he had died and was replaced by Adolphe Menjou. This film is significant because it is the first time that the word son of a bitch was ever said in the movies. We did it by covering up the bitch with a little ding, son of a ding. Well, at the height of what you might call my Hollywood accomplishments, I decided to devote my time to my final goal. If that's for me, I'm not here. I decided to devote my time to my final goal of becoming the greatest aviator in America. I went to work for a little while for American Airways as a co-pilot, but they found out who I was and I didn't work for them very long. I designed and I built a little airplane called the H-1 Racer. It had flush rivets on it, and it broke the world speed record that had formerly been held by the French. And it crashed in a beet field in Santa Ana. Well, next I got myself a Northrop Gamma, and I re-outfitted it with a more powerful horsepower engine. I wanted to see if I could make a record for a coast-to-coast flight. Well, I took off from Burbank and my antenna snapped off. Then my compass went out. I had no radio, no compass, so I had to fly by dead reckoning, making out the cities as I passed by them. And I made it into Newark with a new transcontinental record. Well, my next project was to see if I could break my own record for a coast-to-coast flight. So I got the H-1 Racer and re-outfitted it, and renamed it the Silver Bullet. And a year later, I took off from Burbank, bad weather, and this time my oxygen mask went out. And I was gripped with a helpless feeling that I was going to crash out any minute now, any minute. So I nosed the ship into a dive and I went down several thousand feet before I regained consciousness. Then I got lucky and I caught a tailwind and I landed in Newark and I beat my old record by 2 hours. It's a very good time for me. The H-1 Racer was offered to the United States Army for consideration. They looked at it and they decided that this airplane wasn't anything that they were really interested in. They said that it would not be very effective in combat. A truly inspired evaluation, because some years later the design was stolen by another country and produced in mass quantities, used very effectively at a place called Pearl Harbor. We call this plane Jap Zero. Well, my next project was to try a flight around the world. So I got myself a Lockheed Lodestar. I outfitted with supercharged engines, a laboratory full of equipment, supplies, and ping pong balls in the wing, so that in case we came down in the water, the plane would float. Well, at the airport, I was pressed by the local politicians to make some statement. So I said that the common bond of aviation transcends national boundaries. And then I took off, and it was a bumpy takeoff. And over the Atlantic, it looked like that we were going to run out of gas. But we made it to Paris, and we broke Lindbergh's record in half. Unfortunately, we were delayed in about 8 hours in Paris because the bumpy takeoff had damaged our right rear strut. Well, it was repaired, and then we took off. And the Germans had told us not to fly across their country because they just said we weren't supposed to do that. And I said to hell with them and flew across anyway. Landed in Moscow. And the Moscovites came out and presented me with a box of Kellogg's cornflakes. Now, where in the hell they found cornflakes in the middle of the Soviet Union is beyond me. I don't like cornflakes very much, but I guess that they figured that that was what all Americans ate for breakfast. Well, next we took off for Siberia. And it's funny how important luck is in our lives, because dead ahead of us was a mountain range 10,000 feet high. Now the maps we had said that they were only about 6,500 feet. Now if it hadn't have been for the delay in Paris, we might have been at this point at night, and we would have smashed right into the mountains. Well, next came Fairbanks, Minneapolis, and finally that last long leg back to New York. They told us over the radio that an orderly reception was being planned and that we were not in any danger of being mobbed. Well, there were about 25,000 cheering, hysterical people there because we had made a new world's record. And I didn't mean to seem ungrateful, but I just couldn't stand all of that attention, so I just quietly slipped away. Now, New Yorkers, they have a funny tradition. If they like you, they dump trash on you. So they gave me a great big ticker tape parade, and I sat on the back of this open car, and it's very, very embarrassing to sit in an open car with millions of people looking at you, but after a while I managed to get into the spirited thing and actually wave back at the people. Americans love creating heroes. Well, let's see. time for April showers? Not yet? Oh yeah, that's right. A lot of people were scared to fly with me. I flew through a hangar one time just to see if I could do it. And there was a time when these fellas from Lockheed, they wanted me to buy their airplane. They took me up and they says, would you like to see how the plane stalls in flight? I said, well, yes. And they flipped the switch and the propellers stopped. And then they started again. They said, what do you think of that? I said, well, I'll show you how to stall the plane. And I took the controls and pointed the ship straight up full throttle. It scared the hell out of these guys. They wouldn't let me fly their plane anymore. But I think if you're going to test an airplane, you have to give it all that it can handle. Now it's April showers, ain't it? Thank you. Though April showers may come your way, they bring the flowers that bloom in May. So when it's raining, have no regrets, because it isn't raining rain, you know. It's raining violets, and where you see clouds upon the hills, you soon will see crowds of daffodils. So keep on looking for a bluebird and a listening for his song. Whenever April showers come along. I'm going to tell you one more story now, and then I'll give you all a chance to have a drink or something. One time, I was in Las Vegas with my crew, and my crew was on call 24 hours a day. And it was on December 24th, which also happens to be my birthday. They all decided to go back home, and they left me a note saying that they would be back the next day. And I was a little upset because I didn't want to be ditched on my birthday. So I decided to ditch them, lose them for a while. So I prevailed upon the hotel manager to lend me his car. He later claimed I stole it. I drove it from Las Vegas to Beverly Hills, and then I abandoned it there because it was out of gas anyway. And about 2 months later, I came back to Las Vegas to the hotel, acting like I'd never been away. My crew was still there. They were very, very bored at being at one spot for so long. So I went up and I said, Joe, downstairs in a cab is a large coffin-shaped box. Now, I want you boys to go down there, and I want you to bring up that box upstairs here, this coffin-shaped box, very carefully upstairs here. And then when you get it up here, I want you to wrap it in brown paper. And I don't want you to use any stickum on it. No stickum. And whatever you do, don't open the box. Every time I checked on them, it looked like they were going to open the box. And I would tell them, don't open that box. Now, when you have wrapped it securely, I want you to take it down to the airplane, and I want you to carefully slant it through the right rear hatch and stow it in the airplane. And don't open the box. Well, you know, people take me so seriously that they forget that I have a sense of humor, because there wasn't anything important in that box. Just a bunch of comic books and junk. I think there was even a douchebag. I was just playing a private, personal, practical joke on them for ditching me. I'm forever blowing bubbles, pretty bubbles in the air. They fly so high, they touch the sky. Then like my dreams, they fade and die. Fortune's always hiding. I've looked everywhere. That's why I'm forever blowing bubbles. Oh, pretty bubbles in the air. Play it again, play it again. Everybody sing if you know it. I'm forever blowing bubbles, pretty bubbles in the air. They fly so high, they touch the sky. Then like my dreams, they fade and die. Bubbles are working good tonight. Fortune's always hiding. I've looked everywhere. That's why I'm forever blowing bubbles. Oh, pretty bubbles in the air. Now there will be a short break. Mr. Ray, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to present my friend Mr. Ray, and he is going to sing a song for you.
Hello, I'm a friend, and we stayed as we were, which was great. Poor Cher started singing at midnight and didn't stop singing till 4. We knew it was going to be quite a bash. One Tatum got stoned on some Lebanese hash and threw up all over the producers of MASH. I couldn't have liked it more. I've been to a marvelous party. Mick Jagger came in with Sean Penn, and a young porno star did a stunt at the bar with a lot of peculiar men. Joan Collins arrived with a baseball team and an umpire to keep the score. Prince Charles was dancing a foxtrot with Di when suddenly she screamed out, "I want to get high," ripped off her brassiere and announced she was bi. I couldn't have liked it more. I've been to a marvelous party. Nancy made an entrance with Ron. She must have been drunk, for she was dressed very punk. Then she locked poor Ron in the John. Then she got fried on Chianti and became the most terrible bore. Boy George walked in with a couple of queens, and Ronnie, who simply hates to make scenes, just sat in the corner and ate jelly beans. I couldn't have liked it more.
Oh, the monkeys have no tail.